Hi, my name is Travis McVeigh. I'm an anesthesiologist from Dallas, Texas, and this is my podcast, Thank You Notes. It's a show about the practice of gratitude. It has been a while. It's been a couple months. Sorry for the delay. I've made a few changes in the show, and I'll get into those during today's episode. I have joined a podcast network called Ars Longa Media. One of the founders of this network is Patrick Beeman, who is my guest today. He's an OBGYN from Ohio. We talk about his stories from his time in the armed forces and his medical training. Over the next several weeks, we'll be hearing from physicians who are thanking their mentors. All of us doctors have people that have helped us along the way, and this is my way of saying thank you to doctors in academic medicine. They have dedicated their lives to teaching the next generation of doctors, and I feel they deserve some recognition. On a final note, while I was reviewing the video of this interview, getting ready for this episode, I noticed my dog Kirby napping in the background. Kirby passed away several weeks ago at the ripe old age of 16. I would like to dedicate this episode to him. He was a blessing to me, my family, and everybody who came across him, and we all miss him dearly. So now that I've thoroughly bummed you out, let's get to something happier. This is my interview with Dr. Patrick Beeman. Thank you for jumping in here with me, Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So for people that are probably wondering why the hiatus, there have been some changes at Thank You Notes podcast, and we'll talk to everybody about those. The teaser here is this is my new boss, Dr. Patrick Beeman, who is the founder of Ars Longa Media, and we'll get into that. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a pleasure to discover your podcast, and I'm just glad my initial enthusiasm was met with acceptance on your part, because I really like the show's concept, and I guess that's probably a unanimous sentiment from your guests so far.
So far, haven't found one that didn't like it, so maybe we'll find out. So we'll start off with a question I ask everybody. Do you write thank you notes?
Yes and no. I do make a practice to practice gratitude for people in my life. The yes part is I do it in some form of medium, but I usually don't actually handwrite anything because, classic doctor stuff. I have terrible unreadable handwriting. So let's see, the last note I wrote was probably sometime in the past month. One of the companies I work for has a employee portal, and they've really been pushing recognizing your fellow colleagues or people that you're responsible for. And I took time out to post a kudos, it's called, to one of the counselors at my opioid treatment program clinic.
Now, you are a father. How many children do you have?
5 that I know of.
And I know one is too little to write them. Do you make the other 4 write thank you notes for birthdays or something like that?
I feel like not as much or consistently as I should. Certainly the 6-year-old, he has had to write thank you notes every year for his birthday gifts and whatnot. And I feel like we did kind of make the kids do this until, they were roughly 12 or something, and then have not been as judicious about encouraging it.
We're trying. My daughter's 3, and we at least, we'll have her write all over the card, and we'll tell her why we're writing the card. And I think it's catching. We'll see when she gets a little older, but yeah. It's the way I was raised, and I'm glad to see that you're passing the gratitude practices on to your own kids.
Yes, I was definitely raised that way. Shout out and thank you to my mom and dad, who often, I think, probably always made me write a thank you note for any gift I received. The memory is not too clear, but I remember there being a meltdown on my part at some point because of the abundance of gifts I got at a party or something, and really being resistant to writing those thank you notes. But yeah, they tried to school me right.
Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Sandusky, Ohio, America's roller coast, and then brief time in Toledo, Mostly the Cleveland area. My hometown is Lorain, Ohio. Went off to college in Southern Ohio, med school back in Toledo. Pretty much all my education has been in Ohio. The only time I lived anywhere else was stationed in the military when I was at St. Louis.
Okay, what branch of the military were you in?
Air Force.
And that's what got you through college and med school and all that?
Not college. I was a health professions service scholarship. So that's the pay for your med school in exchange for a year of service for each year of support.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say my discharge paperwork says that I was on active duty 7 months, 7 years, 4 months, and 11 days. Not that I was counting.
Yeah. Did you ever get deployed?
No. I did go on TDY, or temporary duty, military lingo, to Japan, Misawa Air Force Base, way up in northern Japan. And I was there about 5 months filling in for a fellow doc who broke her wrist. I'm OBGYN, so it's kind of tough to deliver a baby one-handed.
Well, before we go, thank you for your service. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, thanks for thanking me.
Mm-hmm.
I never know what to say with that. I usually something like, I appreciate that. Because I do. Honestly, it was just July 4th. And that had me thinking a lot about, just the idea of being a citizen or loving your country. And I feel like that's another thing that you don't hear a lot about anymore. And I did make a point to at least, text my 3 oldest kids, just, hey, I hope you got time to reflect on the privileges we have in being citizens of the United States for all its faults. There's another plug for gratitude.
Yes. It's, that doesn't get thrown around enough, especially on July 4th or Memorial Day, or, it's out there, but I don't think it's as prevalent. I think we were more focused on the day off of work and fireworks than we are on why we're celebrating these things. So where did you do your training, your OBGYN residency?
Yeah, so that was in the Wright State University, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, combined military civilian OBGYN residency down in Dayton, Ohio, where they keep the aliens.
Yes. Did you deliver any alien babies? Or can you neither confirm nor deny that?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Okay. Did you do a fellowship?
No, I did not. You've been through it too. You go to med school, some people have an idea of what specialty they want to go into, some don't. I initially went in thinking pediatric surgery, and then found out that it'd be a general surgery residency would be the first door to go through. There'd be a fellowship and, some pretty hardcore research. So I was like, I'm definitely not doing 10 years of training.
Yes.
And then as I got through my core OBGYN rotation, I got assigned for half of it to a GYN oncologist. And GYN onc is 4 years of OBGYN and usually three or 4 years of post OBGYN residency training. And I thought, well, that's 2 years less. Maybe I'll do GYN onc because, those are some cool surgeries. And then in residency, by second year, I was like, I don't think I can do another 4 years of training, because it's a tough field because there's few of them. And, you're dealing with life and death, and a lot of, intricate surgical training is what makes it necessary to take that long. So,
yeah, those are gnarly surgeries. And a lot of OBGYNs, when they train, are very, very scared, and rightfully so, of touching colon or bowel or anything like that. And then the gen onc surgeons end up getting right in the thick of that and doing bowel anastomoses and resections, in addition to all of the pelvic organ stuff. And so those are gnarly surgeries. So to spend 3 or 4 years just doing that's pretty intense.
I mean, I don't even know if I appreciate, because I don't know if I could go back and do it again. How I went through an OB residency, like, I mean, it was really like 79 and a half hours per week. You know, we did pretty good about work hour restrictions, but to other people, that being your base kind of work commitment is insanity. And it is tough. It's taxing mentally and physically. Honestly, I think I missed like 5 workouts in a 10-year period in my 20s. And I still managed to exercise at least like 5 times a week while I was in residency. The majority of the time before being in the hospital, even as an intern at like 5:30 a.m. I have no idea how I did this. I had less children, but
that's how you did it. So we're doing a special here, a special series on thank you notes where we have doctors thank their mentors, thank the doctors that trained them. So was there somebody from your training that sticks out, or a lesson that they taught you that has stuck with you?
Yeah. So unfortunately, he's deceased now, but Dr. Edmund Pellegrino, he was an internal medicine physician and author of over 600 books or articles on ethics, medical ethics, and other primary IM type research. But he's been called the father of bioethics, and it was seeing him talk in college that was one of the big catalysts for me to go into medicine, because I had been studying philosophy and theology as an undergraduate, and I had intended to go on to graduate studies in one or both of those disciplines. And then I heard Dr. Pellegrino speak. I was reading a lot of Marx at the time and just thinking about philosophy and the value of doing something active in the world with your values. And he was truly a physician, truly a philosopher, and I was like, I want to be like this guy. So if there's anybody I could thank, and then I was his fellow at Georgetown 2007 to 8 while he was the chair of the President's Council on Bioethics.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably like 83 at the time. Just totally indefatigable, though. I mean, he pretty much, I think, kept that residency schedule his whole life, wrote on a typewriter. Really interesting guy. He was the president of Catholic University of America at one point. I think he had 7 kids or 6 kids, but, an incredibly impressive human being. And I'd be happy to link to this in memoriam piece in the show notes, or a collection of his writings I did. It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to read that as well. So you mentioned you were his fellow. So you did like a medical ethics fellowship a few years ago, like out of training, or?
No, this was while I was a med student. So not a GME or resident type training fellowship, but like a year-long mentorship essentially. And I was working on an application or exploring what's called the theology of the body, which is a large collection of talks or works by the Polish philosopher Karol Wojtyła, better known as later Pope John Paul II, presented a just giant philosophical, theological reflection upon what it means to be a body person, not just having a body or creating this dualism, but a recognition of the fact that the human being is a body. My idea was just kind of exploring this sort of reflection, its application to attitudes about the doctor-patient relationship and doctoring.
Okay, so I want to shift gears to Ars Longa Media. So when did you start it and why did you start it?
ALM, Ars Longa Media. First thing I would say is the name. I love naming things. My children are Evangeline, Augustine, Silas, Soren, and now Maximus Severinus Boethius is the full name of my youngest son. Might be a story for another time, but
yeah, can't wait to see his driver's license when he grows up.
I know, right? But Ars Longa Media. So that comes from a phrase that is often attributed to Hippocrates and is something that elementary Latin students learn. It's Ars Longa Vita Brevis, which literally is translated art is long, life is short. Maybe more loosely for modern ears, it could be, art endures, but life is short or something like that. And I had seen this phrase when I had picked up Latin in college, in all the intro type, coursework or textbooks. And a lot of people don't realize that it was actually, for a long history, been attributed to Hippocrates. It's hard to say whether or not that's true. In any case, he's the best candidate, and was actually referring to the art of medicine. And because I'm a doctor and ALM is a health media and creativity company, I like to say, I stuck with the Latin, and also I just love Latin. Mm-hmm. But why, or how did it come about? So 2015 was the beginning of the third wave of podcasting, it's been called. And I had done a lot of work helping medical students prepare for their United States medical licensing exams, the USMLERx boards, and had noticed that there wasn't really anybody producing content for this particular group in the podcast space. So I started a podcast called InsideTheBoards, and that just continued to grow. I always, though, knew that there were other areas of content I wanted to help contribute to, in philosophy or music's another interest. Naturally, InsideTheBoards itself as a network grew to 7 podcasts. And I started listening to a lot of mental health related content, and just wanted to be able to do some things more in healthcare, health education, mental health. And so got together with Todd Grande, who's a popular YouTube mental health content creator, Dr. Grande, and one of my partners in InsideTheBoards, Dr. Ted O'Connell, who wrote USMLE Step 2 Secrets and Crush Step 1, amongst many other things he does. And we decided to form Ars Longa Media out of InsideTheBoards so that we could expand into these other content areas. So practically, that's how it happened. ALM officially stood by itself as of January 2021 is when we launched it.
Okay, and so what kinds of shows can people find on ALM?
Our main content areas deal with medical education, like the actual, training content for physicians or medical students, mental health, including kind of addiction-related content, and then health conceived more, broadly. Like, for instance, we've got a true crime psychology and personality podcast, or a podcast on personality disorders called Cluster B, the medical education stuff, and hardcore humanism with Dr. Mike Friedman, which is kind of a music and mental health show. As we go forward and grow, What I think people will expect to see more are shows that really feature the intersection of health and creativity. We'll be putting up like active project pages for people to look at things that we have on the back burner or are in the process of developing, where we're looking for, the community who wants this to happen to help contribute, and a lot more content for physicians and helping them just, learn stuff on the go. I'm sure it's a struggle for you, as it is for many of us, to keep up with what we're, supposed to read from our, professional societies each year. It's 100% necessary for physicians to stay up to date, so we're always learning. But making use of that time in the car for me has been huge in terms of staying up to date and actually prepping for my most recent certification exam. I'd like to see more stuff related to really empowering patients to learn about their health and navigate the craziness of the modern healthcare system. I really feel that where things are, just all the complaints that patients have and physicians and other healthcare workers have about, being in these broken systems will never measurably change until it gets out there in the world and the wider world, to where, there's a grassroots effort where patients demand, say, transparency in healthcare pricing, meaningful transparency. Why was my surgery, the charges for my surgery stay $100,000 and then insurance paid $2 and I have to pay $1? That makes no sense, but that sort of thing happens a lot. And there's lots of things that don't make sense in healthcare, and demystifying the system for patients, I think, can help them navigate it better and hopefully kind of empower us as physicians to, affect change where we can within our local practices. Big goals, but, they're goals for an entire generation. I just hope that we can be a part of it. And that's why I'm glad that we're working together as well, because gratitude in and of itself is therapeutic.
What I was thinking about while you were talking is a couple things. Number one, that when it comes to demystifying, it's not just patients that are seeking it, because I've had patients ask me before a surgery, well, how much is your bill going to be?
And you have no idea.
I have no idea. And that's what I tell them.
I know. I say this all the time. To me, it's crazy. Like, if you work at Taco Bell, like, like where your money, your salary comes from how many tacos you sell. You know how much it costs. The customer's not going to be like, whoa, that was $200. There aren't any surprises. And it's in healthcare, people do not realize, like, I had a patient leave an online review and started accusing me of like only trying to like make money and being, focused on the financial aspects. Yeah, I guess the listeners don't really know, but this is not me. Thankfully, yeah. Also, he ended up taking it down. But so much of the perception this taught me that patients have, they don't realize how in the dark we are as well. There are so few people who actually know the economics of this, and that is crippling to our ability, I think, to lead, and make positive changes within, the hospitals and clinics in which we practice this art.
The other thing that struck me while you were talking is that we're kind of at the crest of a movement now where we're talking about the mental health issues that are involved with medical training, because we see residents going on strike. We see nurses going on strike because their patient ratios are going up. And the actual stress of the job, all of these things are kind of coming to a head. And I think Ars Longa is kind of tackling a lot of these things all at once. And I think it positions Ars Longa in a good spot to be in the conversation about all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree with you. The kind of burnout issues amongst physicians, the mental health struggles that are built into medical training. That's another reason I started Inside the Boards, because the way I positioned it early on was essentially like the goal of giving you resources to study for your exams on the go while you're doing other life stuff. So you have the time to spend on, investing in relationships, maybe writing a thank you note, doing things that are good for your own health and those who are, within your charge. So I hope that we can do that. That's a huge motivation for me personally.
So then I would say around, maybe this is like probably 5 or 6 months ago, I saw you posting on a physicians group that we're both a part of, and that you had this podcast network, and I think people were talking about podcasts. And so I messaged you and I showed you the thank you notes thing. So you graciously said, well, why don't we bring thank you notes under the ALM umbrella? Talk to me about like what were your first impressions of the show? What do you hope to see the show do in the future? What do you think thank you notes can provide to the ALM platform?
Like I said at the beginning, and every single one of your other guests has said, this is a great idea. And just the idea of using a thank you note as a basis for a conversation opens up a lot of possibility in terms of, one, practically promoting gratitude, two, giving people an example of how to express thankfulness and its effects or what its potential could be in the people to whom you'd be writing something like that. And when I first heard it, your first episode was with
my friend Ben Fu.
Yes. So I thought that as a conversationalist, you flowed really easily. And I would like to see this conversation about gratitude and about, the physical token of that, a thank you message, a thank you note, see more light within our somewhat thankless world.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. One last question before we get to the thank you notes. What advice would you give to somebody who is starting a podcast, and would that be the same advice for a physician starting a podcast?
So there's a low barrier to entry for podcasting. So anybody can do it. And I mean, if somebody is a creative type, whether or not they're a physician, I think it's a great medium to express one's ideas or to memorialize or immortalize conversations. The potential benefits of podcasting, like, there has been no better networking tool for me. I have got to have conversations with some of my favorite bands by spinning a medical angle to their music. Now, one of our partners in ALM is helping develop thank you notes, is an actual record label. And all of it was just due to, having ideas and getting people on board with, doing an interview on this or that topic. So I would say, put simply, my advice would be, don't underestimate the value of what having a podcast can do for you and your audience, in terms of encouraging them and educating, or whatever the topic is, entertaining. For physicians, I would say I went philosophy, theology to medicine, and then wanted to do a podcast. And unfortunately, it's tough nowadays just to create a piece of content. Like Inside the Boards started out, I wanted to write a book. 2013, though, it was pretty clear that, hard copy books are not going to be fundable. They're not going to be financially viable by just writing it. And so I thought this content would be better served through an audio platform. And my dad was in radio growing up, so this was a natural, fit for me. However, what was not a natural fit was like learning about RSS feeds, editing audio, mixing audio, trying to design a website and all this sort of stuff. But I learned enough to be able to communicate with other people about, how to do things, or not how, but like what I would like to do. I pretty much got my MBA through podcasts on my treks back home to Cleveland from St. Louis when I was stationed there. Just lots and lots of business type podcasts and all this. There were a lot of headaches. So what I would tell physician creators would be learn only enough about the operations and execution of what you're doing that you can hand that off to somebody and focus on the content. Your time is probably worth more than you could ever earn from a podcast. That's not going to apply to everyone. Save yourself some headaches. And if it starts to seem like a burden, try to get back to whatever your original mission was and core idea, and don't get bogged down in the administrative aspects. Or set modest goals. That could be probably another way to do it. Like, know what your purpose is for the show. Where do you want it to be at launch? A year later, what are its potential? Know your value, and see who you can connect with to support your creative endeavors.
That's good advice, and those are conversations I've had to have with myself in the short run of this podcast. But it's funny you brought up the MBA, because when you and I have our meetings, you've always got a list of ideas. You've been able to attack this like an MBA, and that's kind of something that's been in the back of my mind, is you attack this like an MBA would, like, these are the angles for the show. This is what we could do here. We could venture into this. We could go to this charity, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all really good advice. So I wrote you a thank you note. I had to do it at work today. I don't know if you probably recognize this. So I wrote this during my surgery today, and it says, "Dear Patrick, thank you for inviting me onto the ALM platform. When I started my show, I had pipe dreams of talking to people whom I admire. With your enthusiasm for the craft and the medium, I feel that anything is possible for my tiny little show. There is a lot of great work happening at Ars Longa, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm very much looking forward to working with you and the whole team. Thanks, Travis."
Well, thanks, man. I actually wasn't expecting that. I feel like I should have come with a thank you note for you.
I haven't done anything for you yet, Patrick. Let me do something for you.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right. So did you bring a thank you note to share with us?
No, I did not, which is a critical error on my part. My part. We will insert that in here. This goes out to Dr. Alicia Thompson, who was an attending when I was in residency training in OBGYN. So here goes. Dear Alicia, where to start? Becoming an OBGYN is not an easy feat, but one thing that eases some of the difficulty is having good mentors and role models. From the beginning of residency, you stood out as an exemplary model of how to be a doctor with paramount skill in bedside counseling, surgical acumen, and a deep concern for the well-being of patients and those learners like myself under your supervision. Your brilliance in the field is one thing, but how you've carried yourself as a woman in medicine is truly inspiring. My OBGYN training and practice has given me a lot of insight into the plight of women and the challenges they face in society today, which I'm admittedly often grateful I do not have to face as a dude. Training under you was a masterclass not only in being an OBGYN, but also in gracefully navigating a specialty that feels like it's still finding its feet in terms of how to practice medicine in a way that is sustainable for an individual's life and myriad other human endeavors that, we have outside of work. Besides this, when I launched InsideTheBoards to help medical students prepare for their USMLEs, you and Greg were amongst the first to believe in my idea and invest your resources to get ITB started. Beyond the medical realm, I value the friendship and mentorship that you have offered during my residency, early years in practice, and beyond. Our chats, the guidance, and the endless support, especially around my faith and spiritual journey, have been invaluable. For example, just witnessing how you and Greg do marriage and family life gives me hope and encouragement in terms of my own family life. So in a nutshell, I'm endlessly grateful to you for believing in my work, your kindness, advice, and example. I hope and pray for blessings in your family life and professional work. Thank you, Beeman.
Wow, that was a great note, Patrick. I really can feel the gratitude you have for this person. Okay, Patrick, last question. Your dream podcast guest or a dream podcast for you to be a guest on, what would it be?
I feel like that could change based on seasons in my life. However, right now, it might be Tom DeLonge from Angels and Airwaves and Blink-182.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why Tom DeLonge?
So, he's an enigma to me. Like, I got to take my teenagers to see Blink-182. Subsequently, their mom was sort of angry at me because they're very juvenile, but they're also middle-aged now. And hearing some of the scatological humor just, I don't think plays well. But at the same time, I think Tom DeLonge is a poet and he's very creative. And so you see the depth of his art, I think, best in the Angels and Airwaves project. And I also just love the fact that he has this To the Stars media that had at least some role in declassifying and releasing those videos of the unidentified aerial phenomena that the Pentagon released in 2018, I believe it was. And I mean, it's just, I don't know. I can't reconcile him meeting with DoD officials in a serious capacity with about half the things I heard him say at the concert last month. And I feel like, well, geez, if he can pull that kind of non-standard in this world sort of thing, maybe I can too with all my tattoos as a doctor.
I had heard, I knew there were whispers of him being involved with the aliens, but I never investigated it further, what was going on. So that's really interesting. I mean, those songs are catchy and they've lasted for 30 years for a reason. So I think that's pretty good.
Yes, I agree. And and getting to see I just blanked on his name. Oh, Travis Barker.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's because your name's Travis. I don't know.
Might be.
But getting to see Travis Barker drum was subliminal. It was awesome. It was really cool.
All right. Well, that's a good place to end it there. Patrick Beeman, thank you for bringing me into the family. Thank you for being a guest. And let's keep working together.
Sounds good. More to come.
More to come.
And don't forget, record your own thank you note over on the Ars Longa Media website.
Yes, please do that. And I'll have descriptions for all that in the show notes and in the outro. And that'll do it.
Awesome.
Well, we hit all the areas I wanted to there. Religion, philosophy, the burnout epidemic, and aliens. Thanks again to Dr. Patrick Beeman for coming on the show. Also want to give a thanks to Dr. Leon Toy. His band Toy Sauce graciously provided the music for our show. You can stream their album on Spotify. He will be a guest on a later episode. Please follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I will be uploading additional content there. We're going to get into some new areas that I'm really excited about sharing with you. Email the show. The email address is thankyouNotespod@gmail.com. The link for that will be in the show notes, and it's on all the socials. Please write me a thank you note. It doesn't have to be to me. It can be to anyone or anything that you like. And I'll feature some of them in my social media channels or on this show. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again, and I'll see you here in 2 weeks.